absolutely not. So I'm really excited to see. Wow. And it looks like Brian brought Sneak and Show. And this is something that I'm not, super unexcited about. This deck is kind of interesting. I know you've played this deck a lot, and I believe you played this deck at the Team Pro Tour as well.
Yeah, I did. And it's actually interesting because unlike the analogy I made for the modern Storm deck, where they were just cold to a meddling mage for the beginning of the Humans deck existence, the Sneak and Show deck has two avenues of attack. It has Show and Tell and it has Sneak Attack, so it's not completely cold. And after board, it does have a lot of wrath effects between the Abrades and the Pyroclasms, and more threats with Arcane Artisan to get around the non-creature spell disruption of the Humans deck. So perhaps Brian thinks that this matchup is actually reasonable.
Yeah, game one, it might be one of those things where, you just kind of go, here's a Show and Tell, and your opponent's like, yep. And you're like, all right, put in this Crystal Brand, kill you. And the game just ends. But we'll certainly see what happens here. Brian's hand looks kind of interesting here. It looks like he once again won the die roll, which is going to be pretty impressive here. Having the Island and Preordained Ponder Days, City of Traders, Emrakul is going to be pretty solid here. Obviously pretty bad against a Caracas, which, Brian did see out of Jarvis here. Jarvis, on the other hand, has a turn 1 Vial, Caracas, Horizon Canopy, Thalia, Wasteland, Noble Hierarch. This hand's pretty solid. I wouldn't be unhappy to see this hand in any matchup.
Yeah, and if you're in Jarvis's seat, you're, much like we were talking about, you're probably thinking that Brian's going to try to bring a fair deck against you. And maybe that was part of the reason Brian decided to pick Sneak and Show as his deck. And looking at it again from Jarvis's perspective, this hand is pretty solid against a lot of the fair decks in the format. You have Mana Acceleration, you have Thalia plus Caracas, which is really powerful, and Horizon Canopy in case you start flooding. So perhaps he thinks that this hand is going to be better than it might end up being, since it lacks any hate bears for the combo deck. Thalia as a hate bear is less powerful against Sneak and Show than it is against something like Storm. Sneak and Show historically has been stronger against the hate pieces such as Thalia and Chalice in the Void compared to Storm and Reanimator, but weaker against certain permanent-based hate like Containment Priest and Palace Jailer. That Jarvis definitely has a Palace Jailer, and I don't quite remember if he has a Containment Priest in his sideboard. Not sure if Rudy's muted or not. So we see Jarvis playing a Thalia here.
I didn't realize that I was muted. I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay.
What I was saying earlier is Cardboard.live has an app where you can actually see what the deck list is on the Twitch stream. But I do apologize, but this is going to be kind of interesting here. If you looked at what Brian's Ponder was, it was Lotus Petal, Sneak Attack, and that has to feel great, especially against potential Caracas.
Yeah, Sneak Attack is one of the stronger. Is definitely the stronger threat in this matchup. It both gets around Caracas and it gets around the possibility that there's a Palace Jailer in Jarvis's hand, and the fact that he had to force to deal with the Thalia, letting him play the Sneak Attack this turn is going to be really strong. This is really going to force Jarvis to have a Wasteland on this turn for the red source or risk just dying.
Right, and it looks like that is something that is there. It looks like this Wasteland is going to go ahead and rip apart this Volcanic Island here. And Kitesail Freebooter off the top has to be one of the best draws, for Jarvis here, being able to kind of take away any draw spells from BBD.
Yeah, it takes away this draw spell, this Preordain, which will prevent Brian from cantripping into a red source possibly. And it also just puts more of a clock onto the table. The fact that Jarvis gets to play a Wasteland here on the red source and play either a Thalia, probably a Thalia, means that he's actually presenting a real clock. Because he needs to kill Brian quick, especially seeing the Emrakul in Brian's hand. He knows his time is limited and he needs to get this game over with as quickly as possible.
Absolutely here. And the pressure is on now for Brian. He has to find another red source here off the top, and it looks like he found another creature. Certainly not the worst thing in the world. Certainly happy to have, a bunch of creatures for your show and tells and your sneak attacks, but without a red source in play, things are looking kind of harrowing for Jarvis.
Yeah, and this is an awkward spot for Brian as well because of the Thalia. Playing this island means that he would have the possibility of cantripping into a red source, but losing the City of Traders means that would take 2 turns to do. And Jarvis actually drew a pretty good card. This is going to increase the clock pretty significantly, increasing the damage from 3 to 7 this turn, and then I believe having lethal on the following turn. So outside of a red source off the top, I think Jarvis is going to win this game.
Yeah, this is definitely certainly dangerous here.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is one of the reasons that I'm always a little hesitant to not play something like Mountain. In the Sneak and Show deck, obviously it's kind of bad, but there are a lot of matchups where it's just a very necessary card.
Right, and Jarvis actually made a play that I caught myself on right as I said it. Not playing the second lieutenant actually makes a lot of sense because he has the Caracas in play, and it's not possible with the Thalia in play for Brian to draw 2 red sources on the same turn, and keeping up this Caracas is going to be pretty relevant since I believe he still has lethal. Gotta do some quick maths.
Absolutely. This is kind of interesting here. Brian had an opportunity to activate putting Gristlebrand draw and look for a Lotus Petal to try and get in, but to try and kill his opponent with Emrakul. But he didn't end up going to do that here. And what is Brian's play here? What is he going to do?
So I think the reason Brian didn't do that is because there's only 3 Lotus Petals left in the deck, and it's not incredibly likely that you will see a Lotus Petal on the top 3 cards. And the only way that Jarvis was going to have lethal here would be another Thalia's Lieutenant. So I think that Brian thought that he was better off presenting a threat either in the combat phase or on the end step of Jarvis's turn, forcing the use of the Caracas, and then untapping and playing and activating the sneak attack again. But he got punished since Jarvis ended up having the second copy of Thalia's Lieutenant.
And we're gonna take a look here at these 7 cards, and I'm not really seeing a Lotus Petal amongst them. So Jarvis is going to go ahead and take game 1 here against Sneak and Show, and this is kind of what we discussed. This is kind of what we thought was going to happen, that the Humans deck was going to line up really well against a combo deck, and especially one that is very reliant on a very specific card to be able to get in. But we are going to see some great sideboard cards from Brian. We're going to see Pyroclasm. We're going to see Kozilek's Return. We're going to see Arcane Artisan. And all these cards have to be pretty solid in this matchup.
Yeah, you can even consider Pyroblast and Blood Moon as well. Pyroblast deals with Meddling Mage, which is one of the more potent hate bears out of the Humans deck. And Blood Moon, if there's no Vial, might allow Brian to play a little bit of a control game where he answers the first few threats using a Braids and Pyroclasms and then locks Jarvis out of the game.
Right. Knowing that Jarvis doesn't have any basics, it's pretty reasonable to consider something like Blood Moon Go on turn 1 or 2 might just be more than enough to just win the game.
We see Brian boarding out a lot of his soft permission, which is not very good against a deck with all creatures, and shaving on cards like Preordain, which can be a little bit taxing against some of the hate bears, namely Thalia. I think Jarvis's most powerful card after board is going to be the Containment Priest, but the fact that Brian has Arcane Artisan is going to be pretty good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be kind of interesting. We do see that Jarvis is obviously keeping in Reflector Mage. If you put in a Reflector Mage off a Show and Tell, that probably has to feel really good. But, knowing that Brian could have Arcane Artisan, this Reflector Mage might be pretty solid here. But one of the interesting things that we're not seeing is Jarvis is not reaching for his Reclamation Sages here. Do you think what do you think about that?
That's actually surprising to me because the card Omniscience is more common than not, I believe. I know I usually play it when I play Sneak and Show, but it does actually look like Brian has chosen not to play that card in his deck. But you see Jarvis at the last second bringing in a copy of Reclamation Sage. Omniscience is a very good way for Sneak and Show to beat a lot of the permanent base disruption in the format. It helps you beat Containment Priest. It helps you beat cards like Reflector Mage and Palace Healer. And I would say that more often than not, the Sneak and Show deck has it. So having a card like a Reclamation Sake in your deck to blow out that potential is pretty powerful sometimes.
Absolutely. So we are going to see that. I think one of the more interesting things is we did not see Brian board in Blood Moon, and we also saw that Jarvis did not reach for Gaddock Teeg, only shutting off Sneak Attack. He didn't feel, and Force of Will was enough for him to want that card in his main deck. He must feel he has enough disruption otherwise without it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the lower impact hate bears in the matchup, and perhaps he feels that all of his other options are more powerful. We see Jarvis keeping a pretty land-heavy hand on the back of a Meddling Mage and a Sanctum Prelate. The combination of Mage and Prelate could theoretically lock Brian outside of a piece of counter hate if you Mage on either Show and Tell or Sneak Attack and then Prelate the other copy. But I think that's a bit of a stretch to expect after board. The combination of the removal spells and even Arcane Artisan makes it unlikely that the Sanctum Prelate and the Meddling Mage would lock it up.
Ooh, and this is a very dangerous position to be in. Brian, used his Preordain, he's used his Brainstorm here, and he's found no lands. And that is a pretty dangerous spot. That means for the next few turns, Jarvis is going to have free reign to do kind of whatever he wants and whatever he needs, and can kind of play around everything here. So this is certainly a precarious position for BBD because he's locked for the next 2 turns. He's drawing an Emrakul and a Crystal Brand.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a bit of a misstep from Brian. I think in his position, it's an unfortunate Brainstorm lock, but I think I would have, instead of putting the Emrakul 2 cards down and playing this Petal, I think I would have kept both Fatties in my hand, put one of these cards, probably the redundant Show and Tell, second from the bottom, and then next turn go to clean up and discard the Emrakul. So we at least get a fresh draw step 1 turn earlier than we would with this line.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting spot that, maybe not consideration, but perhaps for Brian, he's playing around something like Surgical Extraction. That is a card that is pretty common. And I don't know if you were, I believe on my podcast, Grinders, with Tannen Grace and Brad Carpenter, one of the things we discussed is how prominent Surgical Extraction has become in both Modern and Legacy here. I wouldn't be too surprised to see if Jarvis had it in his sideboard, and I wouldn't be too surprised to hear that that's something that Brian was potentially playing around.
Yeah, that's a good point. I still think, even with that considered, the fact that we have a Gristlebrand in addition to the Emrakul instead of 2 Emrakuls means that even if we get Surgical on Emrakul, I don't think that's a devastating position. I think missing a land drop for 2 additional turns could prove to be too much for Brian to handle. I do like casting Pyroclasm here. If Jarvis had a Thalios Lieutenant on the following turn, that Pyroclasm's effect on the Sanctum Prelate would be 0. So I think he wanted to get that down as soon as he could.
All right, we're going to see Meddling Mage just going to go ahead, hit the table. The Sanctum Prelate and Noble Hierarch are gone. Brian does have some time. There isn't a lot of pressure from his side, and it looks like Meddling Mage named Sneak Attack here. And if Meddling Mage is naming Sneak Attack here, you have to figure that Brian has, something like Venser, Shaper Savant, or Reflector Mage in his hand.
Yeah, Jarvis. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a red flag for Brian. And if I was in Brian's position, I would not be interested in casting Show and Tell as any other mode besides Dark Ritual for Sneak Attack at the moment. Jarvis, luckily for him, has 2 copies of those cards, though, so he's able to develop this Palace Scaler and still have this Reflector Mage in his hand for a copy of Show and Tell. And this will let Jarvis draw into more hate bears and increase his hold on the game.
Wow, and this Kitesail Freebooter off the top for the Monarch is going to be pretty solid. And it looks like Brian did find another land here, and that has to be pretty fortunate, pretty great position for him to be in here. So now Brian just really needs another land to kind of unlock his hand in what it is.
Yeah, I think Brian's game plan here is to draw a soul land on this turn, because that'll let him cast Show and Tell, put in Sneak Attack, and then play around a Reflector Mage or another Palace Scaler, and then annihilate all of Jarvis's permanents. And he also has this Abrade, actually, which is good because this is going to let him kill the Kitesail Freebooter.
Oh, interesting enough, it actually went after Meddling Mage here. I guess with a double show and tell and sneak attack in his hand, this Kite Sail Freebooter isn't going to make a massive impact, but Brian wants to protect his life total and also unlock his ability to cast the sneak attack as well.
Yeah, I think Jarvis is likely to take the sneak attack in this spot, so this is probably Brian thinking that show and tell in Grizzlebrand into draw 7 is going to be good enough for this game, which it very well might be. And this is probably this means that Brian isn't required to draw a soul land either. He can just draw a regular land instead, and then hope that the top 7 or 7 cards of his library is kind to him, since he won't be able to draw 14.
Right. It's also certainly possible that maybe a land into Arcane Artisan might also be pretty good as well.
Yeah, that could possibly be fast enough as well. He still has a little bit of a life buffer, so that's a good consideration as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to see the Crocus. We are going to see the Monarch trigger. It is going to draw unclaimed territory. Not very exciting. Not very exciting at all. So we are going to see a Preordain off the top for Brian. He's going to see a Force Will and a Ponder. I'm not really excited to really keep the Force Will, but I think I might like having the Ponder there just for a solid redraw. But it looks like Brian's going to bottom both, draw a third show and tell. Not very exciting there. And we are going to see a pass back to Jarvis. Jarvis is going to have another Cavern here, another Noble Hierarch. This hand is, it doesn't seem very strong, but it is enough pressure, and it looks like it is probably going to be good enough here, especially attacking for 4 turn.
Yeah, it's a good amount of pressure, and with the Caracas and the Reflector Mage in his hand, Jarvis feels fairly safe. I think the reason that Brian bottomed that Ponder is because he felt like he had to get a little bit lucky and mize either a City of Traders or an Ancient Tomb off of the Preordain, and that pondering into a third land wasn't going to be good enough, but he's going to see here whether or not that will be the case. He's playing Arcane Artisan, which I think is a pretty good play because he has a good feeling that Jarvis has one of the bounce creatures or the exile creatures in his hand, but Jarvis is just going to be able to nab the Arcane Artisan in this spot. The show and tell in either Grizzlebrand or Emrakul wasn't going to be good enough anyways because the Crack is on the battlefield, so Brian kind of just had to hope that Jarvis didn't have it, I think. Yeah,
absolutely here. Now, there are a couple outs. I do believe that Brian has another Kozilek's Return and another Pyroclasm in his hand. So there are a couple different outs for Brian here. And, I got to tell you, Pyroclasm here might be incredibly devastating.
Yeah, Jarvis just gets kept with the Reflector Mage, so that would buy him 2 turns. So, that would probably be good enough. It would definitely be good enough to survive, and it might be good enough to win the game. But he didn't draw one, and Jarvis gets the match.
Yeah, and Jarvis is now going to be up 2-1 over Brian. He is going to be bringing humans, and now we get to see what Brian's last deck is. So now I'm really excited to see what Brian's last deck is, and if it's going to be good enough to beat humans, because if Brian is playing Sneaking Show as his second deck, there's a chance that his third deck might be really bad against humans.
Yeah, I'm worried it's even worse. It's like a Storm deck or something. We're gonna have to see, but hopefully for Brian's sake, it's something that can take down the Modern Menace and force a 5th game.
Yes, I'm the modern menace of humans. I got to say, this is kind of a very interesting part too. A lot of these decks now feel a lot more playable because Deathrite Shaman just isn't in the format anymore.
Right.
So I think it's I think some people were hesitant that banning Deathrite Shaman would cause some issues, but I feel like all it's done is just really open up a lot of diversity, and we've seen a lot of really exciting and interesting decks. And I don't think this Legacy Premier League would be very good if everyone just brought Deathrite Shaman decks over and over. Perfect. All right, so we are going to take a brief commercial break. We do want to go ahead and thank our sponsors of Card Hoarder, Cardboard.live, theepicstorm.com, and MTG First. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around, and we'll be back with potentially the last match of today.
If you've ever used their site, it's pretty obvious why Card Hoarder is one of the largest Magic Online secondary market stores. They carry a fantastic stock of eternal staples, as well as tools to manage your collection, podcasts, and articles. Ordering has never been easier, and with the arrival of automatic order delivery, your cards are transferred in a matter of minutes. Card Hoarder has been serving the community since 2005, giving back to the community with weekly events and sponsorships that make broadcasts like this possible. Visit Cardboard.com today and see what they have to offer. You can also find them in the classifieds by searching #CardHoarder.
Hello everyone, Julian here. I guess you already knew that. A lot of you have been asking me over the last couple of weeks and even months how you can support the LPL. Now there's a new thing to do. September has arrived. This means that you who have been gifted a sub over the course of the last 30 days can now extend that subscription for just $1. So the idea behind that is, like, if you got a taste of what it means to be a part of the Glimpse chain that we are running on this channel, then you can extend that with, instead of $5, just $1. So that's kind of like an incentive. It's also like, of course, it's a marketing thing that Twitch does, but we're just here to try to raise awareness of the adoption, because I think it's a pretty neat idea, and also the name is pretty cool. September! So if you want to do that, you've got time until the end of September to go into your Twitch settings and select the option that converts your currently gifted subscription into like a standard subscription. It's only $1. The streamer will still get the full amount that he would get from a regular subscription, and it's like a cool way to like get even more value out of that. Also in the near future, hoping the partnership gets approved, we're also going to have a lot of more subs, I guess as well, no. Emotes and a couple of things that will like improve the stream. So if you like that, if you're like looking to get some extra value out of your currently gifted subscription, that's something you can do. And now back to the matches. Really looking forward to see who's gonna advance today. Bye bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rudy Brixa here with Edgar Magalhaes. We've seen some exciting matches so far, bud.
Yeah, they've been great. They've been long, a lot of decision points, and quite interesting for most of them.
Yeah, there's got to be. I know there's a little bit of fatigue with us because of how long this is going. I can't imagine what it's like for the players. But Jarvis is probably used to playing forever, and so is Brian. So.
Yeah, it's siphoning from Brian's world testing, but besides that, I'm sure he's pretty used to it.
Oh yeah, Brian right now is actually in Las Vegas, prepping for Worlds this weekend, playing on Las Vegas hotel internet. So that is pretty exciting for him. I know he would probably love to turn this around and have a really good win, a really big win for